We're standing here at Mucàrna Church. I hope I said that correctly, John.
Absolutely.
I understand that on the right hand side we see the ruins of another church.
Yeah, we'll speak about that in a minute or two. This is a very, very ancient graveyard, and the church is probably the 8th church on the site post-Reformation, and it's done in the local vernacular stonework, which is very interesting. Shall we walk up?
Yes.
From here, looking in this direction, this little area here, a kind of hollow, is called Sinclairs Hollow in Gaelic, and they're all Sinclairs who are buried there, which was a very good local name because it means really in Gaelic it's Chloinn the tinkers or the white smiths. That was their trade, and they were very skilled craftsmen for making decorated pistol butts and things like that, you know. And that's here. And if we go down, it's interesting to me because I've got my 5th great grandfather buried here in the hollow. This is his grave. Duncan Sinclair. He was a tacksman, which meant that he had a tack of land behind Connell at the Black Lochs there, at a place called Achan and his ancestors before him were tacksmen up the loch at there are various glens run off. There's Glenlow, Glenlever, and then Glenkinglas, and they were tacksmen of Glenkinglas up there. And on my mother's side, all these stones that are here facing east are McCallum's, and the earliest one of them, which is a recumbent stone there, is dated from, it's about 1692, I think, and one of them was out at the Jacobite uprising, except he was on the government side. He was a tenant of the Duke of Argyll, or the Earl of Argyll at the time, and was forced to turn out, I think, probably. If we keep recording, you can look and see this ruin here. We can walk up, but I would like to make a slight diversion, if I may, here.
Of course.
And just walk along. we're going now to have a look at the gravestone, which doesn't have an immediate relevance to Taynuilt, but it's interesting because it situates Taynuilt in the communications network, as it were. And it's this stone here. Now, this is a replica of a stone that is now in the Museum of Scotland, the RMS, and it stood on a little eminence at a farm called Cladh Macraidh, or it's now known as Cladh Macraidh, and that was actually a part of the pilgrim route through Glenlunnan, where the kings of Scotland and Norway and whatnot were taken down to Loch Fuchen on the road from Oban to Kilmore and beyond, and they were taken by galley from there to Iona. Now, this is a replica and it's somebody's gravestone, but the other one that's in the museum is much bigger than that, and it's got this rather strange flower which is standing on some kind of a plinth or shaft, and someone has incised, some passing missionary or something has incised a cross on the front and on the back. And it's interesting that it stands beside what I think arguably is one of the finest Neolithic sites in Latharna at Cladh Macraidh, which in Gaelic means Cladh Macraidh, which means the graveyard of the sons, S-O-N-S. It's a collective noun for sons, Macraidh, and there's a vallum and fossa there, and 3 large Neolithic graves, all of which have got Gaelic names. So the early Gaels here recognised their significance, but now it's very little known. And if you walk through the glen, you can see it quite clearly, and the whole glen itself is stitched with Neolithic graves. It's a very interesting spiritual place, the glen. But this always interests me because I don't understand, is this a Celtic cross, or is it a Rosicrucian flower, or is it a rising sun?
Yes.
It's very difficult to tell, but it was obviously very important and stood at the side of that road, and not far away there's a crossing over the river, and that was actually called Uillt, the ford, where there is a bile, as we were talking earlier, a votive tree. So very interesting. This, where we're standing now, is the last pre-Reformation church, which was here. And the story is that this part of Scotland was actually under the diocesan control of the Bishop of Dunkeld, a Roman Catholic bishop at the time, and it was a very unruly area, and he decided that he wanted to split his diocese into 2 and create a diocese of Argyll. And he sent his chaplain, and I think this is quite well documented, to Rome to get permission from the Pope, who I think was Innocent II. I may be wrong on that. But he sent him out there. Now the chap was called Harald, Harald, and he had the benefit of speaking both the form of Norwegian that was used for some of the settlements in the area and Gaelic. And so Pope Innocent, or whoever the Pope was, gave permission. And he was quite surprised that a bishop would want to split his diocese into two, but he said that bishop must be a rara avis, a rare bird, as it were. But he gave his permission, and so in the 12th century, Bishop Harald came here and set up his diocese and his cathedra, as it were, here on this site. Now you can see that there are still, it has been restored by a committee in the village, but you can see some of the sites. Here's the sedilia here, where the priests would sit, and in the corner there you've got an ombry where the Blessed Sacrament was kept. And in the 16th century, when it was still operating as a church, there was a cross set up at Airds, which is on the road towards Oban from here, on an eminence there, and it was what we call a crossin tluchgi in Gaelic. It was a prostration cross, and people wandering along the path from the direction of what the present day Oban, which didn't exist at that stage, would stop and prostrate themselves or genuflect, because they could see for the first time the church here and the presence of the Blessed Sacrament. So this is a very important part of Taynuilt's history, and the bishop eventually became too hot for him here, and he translated his diocese, his cathedra, as it were, to Lismore, and the bishops of the Isles resided in Lismore for quite some time until the Reformation, as it were. But very important place, and to prove it, you'll see a lot of Campbell graves on the other side, because the Campbells eventually took over control of this area, but I'll explain that to you later on. Now, if we just move over slightly here, I find this area here, including that eminence in the middle ground, and this whole area here where there's a little settlement called Curtin, which in Gaelic in my mother's time was called Cill, the monastic settlement, and that was where probably Bishop Harald was based, and possibly Christian missionaries and before him in this area here. Now, I would always love to do an excavation on that hill there, because I think it might yield up some quite interesting things. The council, in its wisdom, when they were putting up the Gaelic place names, indicated that this was called Curtin but it was translated literally in Gaelic, Ballinahicosha, the kirk town. But the ancient name was Cill, and if you asked anybody of all the little hamlets that make up Taynuilt where they came from, they didn't say they came from Taynuilt, which is actually the area around the hotel. They said as a hill, from the Cill, from the monastic settlement area. So that's quite interesting. The latest church behind me here, I find that there must have been some very amusing and humorous people building it, because if you look up here, you'll see there's a gargoyle from the original Roman Catholic Church up there. And what all the sort of Presbyterians thought of that, I don't know, but it's interesting that it's incorporated, and that's part of our history, really. And if we wander along here, there's an even more numerous thing here. I find it quite hilarious, really, in that there's a very old fertility symbol here. If you walk here, it's a Fican lady showing her private parts, as it were, and it's called Sheila and nCioch in Gaelic. Sheilas, I suppose that would be Jean or Jane, of the breasts, and there are very few of them. I think I read somewhere that there are only 6 of them in Scotland and Ireland, but I may be wrong there. But I find it quite interesting that there's a possibly pre-Christian or an amalgam of the old beliefs and the new ones embedded in this Presbyterian church.